Hi everyone. So obviously I'm not here today. I got called back for jury duty again. So they're still completing the selection process of the jurors. So I had to go back today. And so what we are covering today is just gives you a little bit of content over the Renaissance, since some of you guys may not know what it is. And I'm going to kind of fill in some of those gaps and give you a basic understanding of what the Renaissance was and who were some important figures of the Renaissance. And I'm going to lecture about it. And so I hate to miss, because I really enjoy lecturing about this, but hopefully you guys are listening and follow along as we go through. I am going to lecture through this video. And you guys, as you are going through this, are going to be completing a guided practice that is posted to your Google Classroom and that you should already have open. So you can see this guided practice here is just a Google form. You'll click the Google form, and so it opens up to this guided practice. You're going to put your name, your hour, your teacher. And then essentially you guys are listening to me lecture, and as I lecture, you guys are going through and answering these questions. So there's no reason why you should miss anything, because I give you all the answers to the lecture. I don't really like it when you guys sit there and just try to go Google a bunch of stuff, because then you're not learning anything and you're not focusing in on what I'm talking about. It's super, super important that you guys are paying attention as I lecture today, and you're not like doing other work or dozing off or anything like that, because you will be responsible for this information, and you have to have this like simple background knowledge on the Renaissance, or this whole project for the next 3 or 4 weeks is going to be difficult if you're just completely clueless. So please, please, please focus in. You should be completing this as we go through. The last number 13 there, it says what's one connection you can make to the standards, and these are our 5 social studies standards. You're going to pick one and make a connection to what you learned, and then you're just going to tell me kind of how you feel about the content after listening to me lecture about it. So if the lecture doesn't get done, then you can finish it on your own if you would like to, or you can wait till tomorrow and I'll kind of go through some things that maybe you guys didn't have enough time to hear, but you should finish it today. Remember, if you ever exit out of this, your answers will be lost. I have made it so that it sends you your responses, so you will get your responses after that. So you guys are filling out this, and I am going to lecture about the Renaissance today. So yesterday, you guys started to get your contracts made and all of that. And today I'm giving you a basic outline of what the Renaissance is. And then tomorrow you guys will get some team bonding time and teamwork stuff. So let's go ahead and get on with this. Obviously I'm not there, so you're not able to ask any questions, but just make sure you're listening and following along. Obviously, if you always have questions, you can email me. But yeah, so here we go. The Renaissance. As you guys have learned, as you read through the DBQ, in the 1300s, the Black Death like swept through Europe and killed tons of people. There was starvation, there was warfare, and Europe was just a hot mess. Like, it was just not good. And so these catastrophic events, along with a massive or enormous loss of life, led to major change in the 1300s. So you can imagine like 2/3 of the population just being gone. Like, the way people are living is going to be different. And so because of this decrease of population, we're number one going to have an increase in food production. If there's not as many people around to eat, there's going to be more food available for everyone, because, I mean, they all died. Number two, decline in food prices. That's a little bit of supply and demand. If you have more supply, the demand is going to be lower. And so prices are going to be lower. But I mean, if you have very low supply and the demand is high, then you're going to have high prices because they want to make money off of you. So food prices were declining. There was more money to spend. You can't take your money to the grave. So all these people died, and there's like all this money available, and like people would steal it from other people or inherit it. But there's just a lot more money because all the people died. And like I said, you can't take that money to the grave. And then people started to specialize in products. And, you know, focusing more on their job rather than doing knick-knack things. There was a lot of specialization in things. So the Black Death truly changed, like everything, just because of this massive loss of life. It just changes everything within society. And so another thing that's going on in Italy is that you should know, when we look at this map here in a minute, this map here, you can see it's not just Italy. Hey, right? Like, Italy today doesn't have all these colors. Like, Italy is just Italy, and it says Italy on there. Here you can see you have all these different, what they are called are city-states. Okay, city-states. rise of the city-states. So each one of these is like its own kingdom, and it has its own ruler, etc. So you like have the Kingdom of Naples, Sardinia, Republic of Florence, Venice, etc., and Milan. So all these, are major cities within Italy, but they were their own city-states. Italy will not be united until the 1800s. Like, we won't even get to Italy unifying until next semester. So Italy is just going to be like this for the next 500 or 600 years. They're not as much of a mess as Germany, but it's pretty crazy down there in Italy. One thing I want to point out is the Papal States. If you know anything about Rome, which is over here, then someone lives in the Vatican in Rome, hopefully, and that is the Pope. And so the Pope is the one that's in control of the Papal States and has control of that territory here. The city-state that we are going to focus on the most during the Renaissance, that is like the home of the Renaissance, the golden age of the Renaissance, you could say, is the Republic of Florence. And so that's this peachy color here. I covered most of that. Catholic Church, nobles, merchants, artisans dominated society in the city-states. Catholic Church especially, the Catholic Church was very prominent in these city-states. And so basically during this time period, everyone wants to show their wealth because everyone has money now. So they want to show all these new displays of wealth. It allows people to specialize in products because they have the money to do that. And their knowledge of the arts. Like if you had a knowledge of the arts, like you were considered like very prominent in society. So there's our city-states. Okay, remember it's not a country. Like this is not Italy. This is the city-states of Italy. So one of the more prominent city-states, and I'll point it out on the map here, is the Republic of Venice. This is like the trading center of the world, and I'll tell you why. It's because it's basically a city upon water. If you know, like Venice eventually will be flooded and would not exist, and the sea levels are constantly rising, and so gradually Venice is sinking. Same thing with Louisiana, New Orleans. It's the same thing kind of going on there. It's gradually sinking, and the same thing's going on with Venice. But it has a long history of trading with other ports from Asia and things like that, in the Mediterranean Sea. Shipbuilding prospered, and Venice is honestly just a beautiful city. There is nothing like Venice in the whole world. Like, I mean, you could compare it to Amsterdam and things like that. Like, there's tons of canals and whatnot, but Venice is its own work of art. Very, very beautiful. You can see... that's how you travel around, is by boat. Like, you don't take a car to get to Venice. Like, you get almost to Venice and you take a water taxi and you get over to Venice then. It's super crowded with tourists, super, super crowded with tourists a lot of the time. And a lot of people think that's really affecting the cities because there's just so many tourists there all the time. This is the most famous bridge, the Rialto Bridge. It's the largest one in Venice, but you can see it's just like this beautiful city upon water. And like the gondola guys with the black and white striped shirts and they sing to you and stuff like that, that's where this originated, or what it's known for as well too. But you can see some of the canals there. This is St. Mark's Square. This is the biggest piece of concrete in the entire city. This is it. This is the biggest, widest open place in the city. You can see the bell tower there and the palace over there as well too, the Venetian palace. But this is St. Mark's Square. But it's kind of dirty, and there's a lot of like street performers, and it's super crowded during the daytime. But the rest of the city is just like windy little streets and alleys, and it's really hard to navigate. Actually, it's really easily to get lost. I've been a couple times actually, once with my mom and my brother, and then also I went with a school trip as well too. So I've been to Venice twice. It's super, super hot in the summer, almost to a point where it's like not enjoyable. It's so hot, but it's a beautiful, beautiful city. This is a close-up of the palace. The symbol of the Venetian royalty is the lion with the wings there. This, just another picture you can see. They mention, people jump off, like if one of those gondolas tipped over and they come off, like the water is not actually that deep. Like if you fell into the water, like most people would be able to stand in the water. But you can see how the water rises and falls, and very, very crowded in Venice, very, very expensive to live there because there's only so much space. This bridge over here is the most popular bridge in Venice. It's the Bridge of Sighs, like, oh, sigh. Like sad because this is actually the bridge that leads over to the prison. So this is the last glimpse that people got of the outer world until they went to prison. And yeah, so that's why it's called the Bridge of Sighs. It's the only enclosed bridge in Venice. And you can see there's Miss Edwards and I, our little gondola ride. And there's another picture just on our gondola ride. This is looking out the Bridge of Sighs. So like that's on that bridge that's like covered, like the enclosed. And you can see out there all the boats and stuff like that. There's tons of people on that bridge taking pictures. Gondolas going through. Another gondola there with some kiddos. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful city, very crowded. But lots of cool things to see there. And this is what makes Venice the trading center of the world. I mean, it's all on water. So it makes sense that it should be the trading center of the world. People come in and out of there all the time. And it's super easy for boats to come in and out of there all the time. So you can imagine, like, there's no bikes. There's no scooters. Like, you're walking because it's very small and there's not enough space for that because it's just like little narrow passageways and whatnot. So that's Venice. It's beautiful. Highly recommend you go visit if you ever have the chance, but it's very far north. Another one is Milan, and that's where silk and agriculture and weapons really flourish. You know, Milan today is like known as like the fashion center of Italy, but Florence is the major one that we need to talk about. Florence is known for its banking, its cloth. Very wealthy people lived in Florence. Monarchs appealed to the Florentine bankers to fund wars, and so Florence has a lot of money. And here's Florence. I went to Florence this year. I forgot to put my pictures in here, but this is from when I went back in 2013 with my mom and my brother. Yes, that's my brother there. This is, I can't think of it at the moment right now, but the very famous bridge in Florence because there's all these little shops and things like that on the bridge. It's very beautiful. I'm really sad I didn't put my pictures in here. I'm sorry, guys. But I went there again this year. It's also very beautiful. This is the famous church in Florence. Another square there, but another beautiful, like, Tuscany. It's kind of that Tuscan region city. But still, very narrow passageways. There are cars that drive through there, but it's super crowded. Michelangelo's The David sculpture is in Florence. Also, Galileo is buried in Florence. Michelangelo is buried in Florence. And so is Machiavelli, which you'll learn who those people are in a minute. But essentially, the center of what we know as the Renaissance happens in Italy in the early 1300s, and it's a movement that's going to alter how people viewed themselves and the world around them, and this awakening is known as the Renaissance, or the rebirth of philosophical and artistic movement in the era where movement flourished because people are traveling all the time. There's a renewed interest in Greek and Roman literature in life. You'll see when countries struggle, and like there's like been a lot of just death and destruction that's happened, and like they're in like the lowest of lows, they always look back to what was the most successful time of their history. And you'll notice Italians always look back to the Romans because Italy will never be greater than what it was during the Roman Empire, where it controlled so much of Europe and Asia and other parts of the world as well. So there's a renewed interest in that Greek and Roman literature and culture and the way of life. They studied it to see why was it so successful and why were they achieving so much during that time. And what they figure out is that there's an emphasis on the power of human reason, like people questioning why things happen, like not just accepting it because the church tells you it's that way, but really questioning why this stuff is happening. And so that's why during the Renaissance, we have all these advancements in arts and sciences, because people are not just like they're just not listening to other people or the church just saying like, this is how it is. And no, there's people who are saying like, well, why does it happen that way? You know, Sir Isaac Newton is asking questions, and so is Galileo and Leonardo da Vinci and whatnot. So it's a really strong emphasis on human reason and really inquiry, things like that. And so what caused this Renaissance? Like, why did they start to look to that? Well, as I talk about, if you've ever been to Italy, and especially in Rome, you'll see all of the remnants of the Roman glory. And as I talked about, trading with the Byzantine Empire kind of sparked some of that as well, too, because the Byzantines heavily studied the Greeks and the Romans, trade with Southwest Asia. They see how much advancements is going on over there. Like, I'm telling you, the Chinese at this point are ahead of everyone. We'll talk about how they fall behind later, but they trade with them and they're like, dang, like they're so much further ahead than us. And so they really want to look at why are they further ahead? Because they're encouraging curiosity and people are questioning things. So they lead to new inventions and new discoveries. The rise of wealthy city-states and the decline of feudalism. What this means, feudalism is, think about your knights. Okay, like the knights worked for someone and they worked for someone. So there were these different levels of society, kind of like the caste system in India. You'd have a peasant, and if you were a peasant and you're born a peasant, like that sucks because you're always going to be a peasant. But if you were born a king, like that's awesome because you will always be a king and you will never be any lower. So basically, like you were born into a class of society and you could not move up. Well, they were getting rid of that. They're like, no, like you can do what you want to do in life. Like you can rise up within life. You can be born poor and like be successful later on. So that really contributed to it as well too. And wealth and prosperity. I mean, when you have money, an abundance of money and very few people, things start to happen. So traders, bankers, manufacturers start to become very popular as well. Because of all this instability that now leads to the Renaissance, you have this time period, where before this, people very heavily relied on the church. Like they looked to the church for everything, for every question. They truly relied on the church. And because of all this darkness that happened, people kind of gave up on that a little bit and started to practice. They saw guidance through secularism to be free of religious rule or teachings. They felt they almost said they were let down. So people started to look more to looking at a worldly view rather than a spiritual view on life. At this point in time, people just like lived for death, like life after death. Like what was going to happen in heaven and things like that. And so now they're not necessarily looking at that. They're like enjoying the moment. They're living life to the fullest and they're appreciating their life more because they see what happens and all the death and destruction. And so secularism is a vocab word that you need to know. It's to be free of religious teachings or rule. And so people, because they're being practicing this secular belief, it resulted in the development of humanism. Humanism is the studies of the different humanities. So basically, these are all the different like parts of school that is not like science or math. It's your art, it's your history, it's your speech, it's your English, it's poetry, it's rhetoric, it's communication, it's religion, Spanish, etc. Those are the humanities. And people who specialize in being really good at those things were called humanists. And so that's one thing you need to realize is because of the Renaissance, there's an increase in the humanities because people are not looking to the church anymore for answers. They're exploring different things, and they're doing that by studying the humanities and becoming like learning different languages. Practicing different artistic ways and things like that. And so because people were not as reliant on religion, they sought this worldly view, and to become more well-rounded, they started to study the humanities. When doing this, they started to read manuscripts and things like that. They saw the importance of understanding how things work, and then that sparks an interest in science and math. And the belief of human dignity. Hey, like your life was important. The belief of education. You need to go to school. You need to learn how to read and write. Supporting the arts, being the practical affairs of life. Most Catholics, though, if you were a true hardcore Catholic, they remained committed to their religious teachings. Others, though, developed an admiration for human achievement. And it's during this time period because we're questioning things, because a lot of people are kind of breaking away from religious rule and teachings. You see a lot of advancements in art, and you see a lot of advancements in science because they're not just accepting the way that things are. They want to explore, they want to learn more, they want to read, they want to write, and they want to ask why. So you have the rise of the humanities, and you have people who are humanists. A humanist is also known as a Renaissance man. Essentially, a Renaissance man can do anything. So it's someone that's like good at dancing and speaking and writing and on history, but they're also good at science, and maybe they're good at singing. Like, they can just kind of do everything. And so we're going to watch a little video here over some famous Renaissance men of the time period. This is a little break. As you're watching it, think about, like, who is an example of a Renaissance man in society today? So it could be one of your classmates. It could be someone in your grade that's just really good at everything they do. Drama and sports and school and all those things. So think about, it could be a Renaissance man or woman as well too. So let's watch this video here. I'm going to turn up my volume. Yes, it is a corny musical video and you're going to love it. So I'll let this play and then I'll start talking after it's done. Okay, so hopefully you got from that, they can do anything. Oh yeah, you like that jingle there. Anyway, but yeah, so maybe some of those people sounded familiar to you. We're going to get to talking about some of those people here in a minute. So, who fueled the Italian Renaissance? The Medici family. The Medici family ruled Florence, and Lorenzo de' Medici is the most famous one. He ruled from 1469 until his death, and that was the golden age of Florence. And he poured tons of money into the arts. So, people like Raphael, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Donatello, your Ninja Turtles, a lot of them hung out in Florence because the arts were flourishing there, because they just threw all their money into the arts. He was also able to keep Florence from being conquered, and then once he died, Florence was conquered. That was kind of the end of the golden age. But here's Lorenzo de' Medici. He looks like the guy from Shrek, like the little prince guy from Shrek, Lord Farquaad. Yes, Lord Farquaad. He looks like the Lord Farquaad from Shrek. But this is Lorenzo de' Medici of the Florentine Republic, or the Republic of the Florentine, or Republic of Florentine. So He's the one that fueled it. Some key figures of the Italian Renaissance, though, we're going to talk about the writers first. Niccolo Machiavelli. Okay, Machiavelli wrote the book The Prince, and probably the most famous line from The Prince is, as a leader, would you rather be feared or loved? And it poses a really good question because it talks about leadership and, as a leader, do you want your people to love you or do you want your people to be scared of you? Michael Scott says it best. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. So, a lot of the stuff that was written so many years ago is used in pop culture and things like that as well, too. So we'll watch that Office clip tomorrow. But this is Niccolo Machiavelli here, and he wrote The Prince, Would You Rather Be Feared or Loved? Castiglione is this guy over here. He wrote the Book of Courtier. The Book of Courtier took him 20-something years to write, like an unbelievably long amount of time. And basically, it is the book of how to be a gentleman, essentially. And he has like all these rules, like you should do this to be a gentleman. You should be in the arts. You should be in the sciences. You need to treat women this way. Like he has all these rules spelled out for how to be a gentleman or a gentlewoman. And it took him 20 years to write. Isn't that nuts? Like, that long to write that book, but it's like his most famous piece of work. So these are probably the two most famous writers of the Italian Renaissance. I will tell you, though, the Italian Renaissance is not known for their writers. Now, Machiavelli is pretty famous. You might hear of Machiavellian ways because Machiavelli did say that he would rather be feared. And so if you hear about that Machiavellian leadership, it's like that greediness to lead and to be feared by your people and things like that. He's pretty famous. Castiglione, this might be the first time you've ever heard of him before, but the northern writers are more famous because of old William Shakespeare, and we'll get to him in a minute. Probably these are our most famous, though. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Titan, and Donatello. Probably the most famous of the entire Renaissance, though, is Leonardo da Vinci, and this is him right here. Leonardo da Vinci is considered like definition a Renaissance man because not only did he paint, he sculpted, he was an inventor, he was a writer, he did it all. It's really cool because some of his most famous things is just like doodles in his notebook. And what made him so famous is how realistic that his art looked. And so, his most famous pieces are the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, and the Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man, if you could see me right now, it's the one where his arms are out and his legs are out and he's in the nude. But that is actually a drawing. Leonardo da Vinci did all of his doodles in these notebooks. And so these notebooks today are worth millions and billions of dollars because, oh my gosh, Leonardo da Vinci's notebook, someone who actually owns one and donated it to a museum was Bill Gates. Owned one of Da Vinci's notebooks. And the cool thing about Da Vinci's writing is he writes so you can only read it with a mirror. And that was his code, so people wouldn't steal things. So if you ever see any of his books, you'll see that you really can't read any of it because it's written, so you have to read it with a mirror. He was also an inventor. He had one of the very first ideas for a helicopter. And this is way back in the 1300s. So very, very, very talented man. You guys all know the Mona Lisa. I'll show you here in a minute. And the Last Supper painting probably as well, too. That is in Milan. The Mona Lisa is in Paris at the Louvre. Michelangelo, his most famous pieces are the Pieta, which is now kept in St. Peter's in Rome, and very famous sculpture of Mary and Jesus. And then you have the statue of David, which is this massive, 13, 14-foot statue of David from the story of David and Goliath. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And then the beautiful Sistine Chapel, which I've had the pleasure of seeing 3 times now, and I'll show you some pictures of that later. But Michelangelo, these guys did not get along. They lived during the same time. They did not like each other at all. Michelangelo was a little bit more brash, rough, did not get along with people. Leonardo was a little bit more chill. Raphael, he did frescoes. He did the School of Athens and the Raphael rooms in Rome. Titan was also a famous artist. And Donatello did the bronze doors and some other works of art as well, some other sculptures. So let's take a look at these works of art. But these are the most famous painters and sculptors from the Renaissance. So this is the Mona Lisa that's in the Louvre in Paris. I've seen this 3 times as well too, and as you probably know, this is not that large of a painting. You can see it's all the way here. This is a security glass box that goes down at night and rises in the morning. But the interesting thing about the Mona Lisa is you can't tell whether she's sad or she's happy. And then if I was on one side of the room, it looks like she's looking at you. And if you go to the other side of the room, it looks like she's looking at you. So it's these dimensions that he's painting with, because honestly, prior to the Renaissance, people didn't look like humans. They look like just like weird aliens, kind of. And so Leonardo da Vinci studied anatomy and the way the human body looks and the bone structures and the muscle structures. And so he was able to paint more realistic looking paintings than what we had ever seen before. So this is way advanced for the time period. Here is the Vitruvian Man. So you can see, this is actually a page from his notebook. So you can see his writing as well too, but this is a very famous drawing or sketch from his notebook that talks about the dimensions of how long you're, like the perfect man, like how long the arms and the legs should be, and fingers, and what from shoulder to elbow and all that stuff. So if you're interested in what his statistics were, you can look that up. But this is the Vitruvian Man. Oh, look, there's young me. But this is my brother and I, and this is the Pieta, which you guys have to imagine, like, this was just a big rock. Just a rock. And Michelangelo sat there and sculpted that. Isn't that nuts? Like, it's just a big piece of rock, and he sculpted that from a piece of rock. This sits in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This is where the Pope lives, is in the Vatican, and this is where he preaches, is at St. Peter's Basilica. So whenever the Rome talks, he talks from the balcony of the Basilica, and this sculpture is sitting in the Basilica today. This is the only piece of art that Michelangelo ever signed, and he was humiliated after he did it, because they're like, no way Michelangelo sculpted this, and so he signed it, and then he was just like so upset with himself that he did that, and so he's never signed a piece of work again. This is the only piece of work ever signed by Michelangelo, and you can see it's across her chest here. Just a few more pictures of the Pieta. I think this is the last time. This was from my honeymoon when I went with Mr. Underground. So there's a few more pictures of the Pieta that sits in the Vatican. And this is done by Michelangelo. This is the David. This is from the story of David and Goliath. And this 14-foot statue actually stood atop of a building facing Rome, because Rome is the big bad Goliath. And David represents tiny little Florence, and how it was going to protect win over the battle over the big bad Rome, because Rome wanted to take over Florence. And so Michelangelo was tasked of sculpting David. And so you can see this is David. There's some things that are wrong with him, like his hands are slightly, or actually largely out of proportion with some of his body as well too. But this, once again, was just a big piece of rock. And he sculpted that from the big piece of rock. So very famous David sculpture that sits in Florence today. It's not in its original resting place. That was on the roof of a building. Can you imagine? This is in a museum in Florence today. This is the beautiful Sistine Chapel, and this picture does not do it justice, because whenever you walk in to see this, like, it's just breathtaking. Like, I almost you get almost teary-eyed, because it's just so beautiful. It goes through the stories of the creation of heavens all the way through the end of the different stories. You can see, like, the creation of Adam, things like that. It tells the different stories of the Bible. Each of these people are like 7 foot tall. So you can imagine everything that's going on there. This took him 4 years to paint. He had to crawl up on a scaffolding and sit there. You can imagine cranking your neck. If you do it right now, like, you could crank your neck and sit there and stare at the ceiling, and you can imagine yourself painting that and having to get the proportions right. I mean, worrying about paint dripping on your head. There was no electricity, so how do you see? You have to use candles. There's no air conditioning, and heat rises, so it's super hot. Took him 4 years to paint, but it's one of the greatest masterpieces of all time, and the color still looks beautiful today as well too. It's in the Sistine Chapel, and this chapel is mostly used for when they need to select a new pope. You'll know, like the black smoke or the white smoke comes out of the chimney there at the Sistine Chapel. This is where all the cardinals are located when they select the new pope, and so it's right next to St. Peter's Basilica. Probably the most famous piece of this is the creation of Adam and the 2 fingers touching. You guys might have seen this in your homes before, in someone else's home as decor, but that is Michelangelo's work there. You're not supposed to snap a picture, but my brother did. So you can actually see the Sistine Chapel. This is the Last Judgment painting back there that he also did as well too. I can't remember. Oh yeah, that's Mr. Unreal. He did a video, but I'm not going to show you that right now. This is the Last Judgment painting, and it's really cool. This is a self-portrait of Michelangelo. You can see going from the heavens, and this is hell over here. I have some stories to tell you about this, but I'm going to keep moving on. But this is also a very beautiful piece done by Michelangelo as well too. So you can see this is actually some zoomed in version. So I did put some stuff in here. This guy was a guy who criticized it. So he put him in there, and you can see, I'm not going to point it out, but you can see where that snake is. And he also put a donkey's ears on him. You think of another word for donkey right now. And then you can see where his head is too, and he put him in hell. But this was a guy that like criticized his work. And then basically they criticized it because there was all this nudity. So they went back later and painted loincloths. And then this is a self-portrait of Michelangelo here. This is where the Sistine Chapel is located, in case if you did not know. So it's located back there by St. Peter's Basilica. So my brother and I are standing in front of that right now. And then where that arrow is the Sistine Chapel. So moving on, I'm also getting my charger out as we talk about this because my computer's about to die, as you can see. Oh yeah, there's Mr. Unreal and I when we went on our honeymoon. And then I also went back to Rome this summer with the school as well too, but I don't have any of those pictures in there. Once again, the Sistine Chapel is right there. When the Pope talks, it's right there. This is St. Peter's Basilica. The Pope apartments are over here. This is where the Pope lives, is over there. It's pretty cool. So when looking at paintings, and when we're talking about art, you can look at it as medieval or Renaissance. And there's a big difference between medieval and Renaissance. Medieval work looks like formal figures. It's very religious. Important figures are shown larger than everyone else. They look very stiff, very little sense of movement. They look kind of like aliens. Everything's two-dimensional. Everyone has clothes on because, you know, it's the medieval times. Renaissance, you notice everyone's naked all the time. But it just doesn't look real. But it's often very, very religious as well, too. Very flat, no emotion in the faces. While the Renaissance is opposite. It did show some religious, but a lot more non-religious than medieval did. It reflected a great interest in nature. You see different perspectives. They learned how to paint with perspectives. Figures were lifelike, okay, because they studied anatomy and they studied muscles and things like that. And so they look more actually like people instead of just like weird little drawings. There's more movement. There's more color. It's bright. It's beautiful. And what I mean by movement, just like the flow, and you'll see that in the paintings. But yeah, and you'll see a lot of them are usually nude. There's a lot of nudity in Renaissance paintings. So we're going to look through some paintings here and see if you guys can tell which one's Renaissance and which one's medieval. You don't have to say it out loud because I'm not there, but think about it to yourselves as you're talking. So this painting here is, you guessed it, hopefully medieval. Even though there is some color here, like these don't look like real people. They kind of look like birds, honestly, to me. It's religious once again. Everything's just like very flat. There's no movement. But yeah, that is a medieval painting. Once again, medieval. Okay. Once again, not very bright colors, very flat. There's not much perspective. You know, the more important figure is bigger than everyone else. These people don't really look like people. Okay. But yeah, and so our next one, you guessed it, Renaissance. You can see there's movement, there's perspective. You can tell that that's further away than this. She's nude for another thing. There's color. This is the Birth of Venus, a very famous painting from the Renaissance. And so, yeah, so hopefully you can tell like the difference between these and then the Renaissance. And they painted with fluidity and color and perspective, produced some really great work. Now, eventually, these ideas go north. They travel, you know, people come to visit Italy, and then they go back up north, and maybe they've been studying there. And so these ideas do eventually spread from Italy. They go through Germany, and they go through England and things like that. And so because there's an increase of wealth, there's more people that are getting higher education, going to college, and so they would be in Italy for that. And so not only did the Renaissance happen in Italy, it also happened in the north as well too. It started in Italy, went up north. Some key figures of the Northern Renaissance, you guessed it, Mr. William Shakespeare. As you know, you've probably studied in English, Romeo, Juliet, Macbeth, Midsummer Night's Dream, Hamlet, Caesar. There's a ton of them, okay? Thomas More wrote the Utopia. Hopefully you know Utopia is a perfect world. He wrote a book on it. Artists, Jean Hubert van Eyck, the Ghent altarpiece, which I think I have some pictures of this in a minute, but if you don't know, the Ghent altarpiece is in Belgium. Albert Dürer did a lot of like copper engravings. This is Van Eyck. This is Dürer. He did a lot of copper and woodcut engravings, and Hans Holbein did portraits. He actually did Sir Thomas More's portrait there. He did King Henry VIII's portrait, which I used to have in my back wall, but he did a lot of famous people's portraits. So actually, I don't have a picture, but if you haven't ever seen it before, the Ghent altarpiece was one of the items that the Nazis stole during World War II. They did a movie about it. It's called The Monuments Men, and that's the major piece that was stolen. And so he's the one that actually painted that during the Renaissance time periods. But you can see they're not as famous as the Italian ones, but it was going on. Like I said, these writers were more famous than the Italian Renaissance writers. Finally, what's the difference? Like we have an Italian one, we have a northern one. What are the difference between the two? The best way you can distinguish is, number one, in Italy, the humans look like Roman gods or Greek gods. Because that's what they look to. And so they look like athletic and like ripping muscles and things like that. And the Northerners, a lot of them are bald, frail, imperfect. They don't look like those Greek gods. So they still look more lifelike, but not like the Italians. Northern European, you will see more religious pieces than what you'd see in Italian. So, yeah, a lot of emphasis in the Bible and Christianity. So that's all I have for today. Hopefully I was able to answer all your questions and did not take too long doing this, but I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully I've said hopefully like 100 times. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye-bye.